But we have an influx of demand for goat. We have a lot more ethnic buyers that are in our area, and it's all over the United States. And I'll be the first one to tell you, I prefer goat meat to lamb myself. It tastes better to me. It seems to me that goats bring a very unique set of challenges for multiple reasons, and I'd like to know, when you think about raising goats as opposed to raising sheep, are there any unique challenges that come to mind with goats as opposed to sheep, and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, no doubt, goats have. I mean, just to start off with, it's a very simple feedstuff aspect. Goats have evolved over millennia to browse more, to eat more leaves, to eat more trees, more forbs. Grass is really a tertiary consumption aspect to them versus sheep. And so, what a lot of the ranches that I see run them in conjunction with each other, because they can appreciate the feedstuffs that those goats will consume, and then also appreciate the feedstuffs that the Dorpers will consume, or, cattle or something of that nature. And really, in my opinion, pasture management, rotational grazing is very critical when you talk about either species. But it's a little more unique on goats because they can certainly challenge maybe your native woodland area or something of that nature. They also eat hays differently. We feed different types of hays to them, something with a solid stem versus a hollow stem type hay. They like that palatability and that texture. They like to chew. They like to nibble, use their lips and consume those types of feedstuffs. And so I certainly think that's important as you're looking at a difference between the species. Also, certainly, in my opinion, goats can be slightly more susceptible to the cold just because they don't have that wool on their back, even like some Dorpers do with a little bit of a cape. But I still think, again, you talk about management, you're going to be very similar. Fencing is one of the biggest issues with goats. Nanny goats are going to grow horns. They can get their horns stuck in some fences. You want to have sound management practices there. And for some reason, some goats just love to escape. And we have seen that here in some situations where we didn't even know we had a hole in the fence. And I got a set of goats in that pasture, and by gosh, they find it faster than we do. I can tell you that much. Then sometimes they never leave. Sometimes they'll never find a hole. So a little bit of that's habit and temperament. But, I think when you look at the two and you're saying, well, do I want to get involved in the goat industry? Do I want to get involved in the sheep industry? You need to understand what your clientele desires and how you have a potential to market them. Because like you mentioned, there is certainly some difference in personal preference on whether you're looking at goat meat, whether you're looking at lamb, what size of animal do you want to harvest, what type of animal, an intact male or an unblemished animal versus something that, if you don't castrate a goat kid, he could become fertile in months and be potentially inbreeding, your herd. And so, but if your buyer pool wants an intact male, then you may have to develop a different facility area to put those goat kids into until they're ready for a specific time of the year, for that buyer pool. So you do have to kind of look at these industries whole scale and with kind of a 30,000 foot view and say, how am I going to reach my goals and manage these animals appropriately?
So for someone getting into raising sheep and goats, is there a perfect setup? If you have somebody come to you and say, how many should I get? What should I start off with? I normally tend to steer people towards, if they want to breed, I'll say, hey, get a couple ewes, get a ram, get a couple does, get a buck. Start off simple, go through one season, go through the process slow and easy with maybe just a couple does or ewes, do the delivery process, get your feet wet, and then, come back to me in a year and we'll talk. Because I get a lot of people that come to me and say, I think I want to get 50. And I'm like, no, you don't. You want to talk to me in a year. Would you have a preference as far as numbers starting off for someone? And would you have a a breed or a species that you would recommend? I know that's a loaded question, but if you can, I'll just pass that on to you and let you figure that out. What do you think?
Well, it takes a lot of work. I mean, there's no two ways about it. If you're involved in agriculture, you're going to be out breaking some ice in the winter. You're going to be out putting out some hay. You're going to be making sure those animals are healthy on a daily or semi-daily potentially basis. So, you have to be saying, okay, how much time do I really have to give to this if it's a hobby? Or even if it's something you're looking at on an economic side of things, you have to say, okay, can I spend enough time to make sure I'm managing these animals properly? And so I am the world's worst at starting small. I don't start small at anything. I never really have. I got involved in some exotic side of the industry this year, and I thought I'd get 10 or 15. I ended up with about 80 of them. Okay. But, I am learning through that hey, you know what? Maybe I got a little big, a little quick, and I've got to take a step back and look at my facilities and some of my management aspects. And so you have to know what your facilities can handle. In a climate like y'all are in Indiana or anywhere that gets significantly cold weather, even here the last couple of years, we've had some ice storms in February. They have presented some major challenges for people in this industry. And so if we didn't have some of the barn space that we have and the shelters that we have, we would have lost animals potentially from that. So you have to look at your facilities, look at your time, say how much can I manage? Whether that's 2 females or 3 or 4 or 5, that's kind of a personal opinion on that. And a ram or a buck or something of that nature, obviously, to get those animals bred. Or if you purchase them bred, you're still going to need that male to achieve that. So yes, start with a realistic number that you can manage and go through a breeding season, go through a lambing or a kidding season, something like that. And say, okay, you know what? I could manage a few more potentially. Then you expand and you move on up to a point where you say, this is enough for me. And that's the approach that I would take when you're looking at expansion. When you're looking at what kind to get, some of that's just aesthetics. I hear that all the time. I say people say, well, I prefer the white Dorpers. I prefer the black Dorpers. Black Dorpers are just commonly called Dorpers. But, I prefer the whites or the blacks. You hear that as a slang, if you will. And that's just a personal preference, and I say, well, what makes you like them better? And some say, oh, I love the way the black is on their neck and their head. Some are like, oh, I just love that they're all one color on the white. It's just simply personal preference. However, I would highly recommend you get an animal that is adaptable to your climate and is adaptable to your rainfall patterns, is adaptable to your setting. You have to, and that's what I like about Spanish goats and Dorper sheep. Admittedly, I think they're very adaptable. I think that they have been honed over time to be extremely maternal, extremely fertile, and can raise progeny on down the road for you successfully.